Welcome back to Boycott for Justice. This is the podcast series where we empower South Africans to take a meaningful action against the ongoing genocide and occupation of Gaza by exposing those complicit in human rights violations. I'm your host, Salailo Makudir, and as always, I'll be joined by Roshan Dadoo, the coordinator of the SA BDS Coalition. And this is the second episode of hashtag Boycott for Justice. And in this episode, we'll be shining a light on the deliberate destruction of Gaza's education system, a crime many are calling scholasticide. I think this is a term that I just learned recently, and I think Roshan will just unpack a bit on it. And then we'll also be discussing academic boycotts, the broader impact of the academic boycott as a powerful tool in global fight against apartheid and occupation, and how it directly supports scholars and students in Gaza. Education is a right, not a privilege, and through academic boycotts, we can challenge the systems that perpetuate the oppression. Roshan, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. This is our second edition or second episode of this podcast series that we've started, hashtag Boycott for Justice.
Yes, thanks for inviting us again and for putting on this series, because it's important to look at all the different aspects of BDS.
And in today's episode, we'll be focusing on academics. And when my producer Nasreen was just giving me the brief of what are some of the things we'll be discussing, there's a phrase or a new word that just jumped at me, and I would like you to maybe unpack it for us and just make me and maybe the broader audience to try and understand it a bit better. Scholasticide. What is that? What does it mean? Am I even saying it right? Is it a term that's always been there, or is one that just evolved and it is one that came out because of a need of the ongoing genocide and what the current events in Gaza?
Yes, I mean, I think we've seen that all the universities in Gaza have been bombed, mostly destroyed. And again, still we're seeing almost daily targeting of the bombing of schools, the UNRWA schools, which now are not even functioning properly as schools, but functioning as shelters, because as we know, I mean, what's happening in the north of Gaza right now is just unbelievable. The way that, the Palestinians are having to move all of the time in a constant search for some kind of safety, not that there is anywhere safe now in Gaza. But it's important to note that the targeting of education and of schools and universities is a long-term assault on Palestinian education by the apartheid Israeli state. And in fact, it was a Palestinian academic, Carmen Abulsi, who coined the term scholasticide. And she says it's to describe this
Scholasticide. That's how you say it.
I think so,
Scholasticide.
yes. I hope so.
All right.
But she says it's to describe the systematic destruction of Palestinian education by Israel to counter a tradition of Palestinian learning. And that tradition reflected the role and power of education in an occupied society in which freedom of thought posits possibilities, opens horizons, and contrasts sharply with the apartheid wall, the shackling checkpoints, and the choking prisons. And so this idea of how important education has been in Palestine as a site of resistance in and of itself, even prior to the devastation of the education system in Gaza since the start of the genocide. So I think it's a term that's really appropriate to use now, because it does describe the ongoing, constant attempts to end resistance, through education, through scholarship, through in every site. Every site is a site of struggle, in effect.
No, I think it's a very, very interesting and I think very relevant term. And I think, one that a lot of us need to know a bit more on. But just moving swiftly right along, I want us to focus now on academic boycotts. Just first and foremost, what an academic boycott involves and why is it such a critical part of the broader BDS strategy?
Yes, I mean, in fact, the call for academic boycotts predated slightly the BDS call. And we've seen, still now, or at least in particularly in America, but it quickly spread across Europe and all parts of the world, including in South Africa, students demanding that their universities disclose their funding, make sure that they are not complicit in any way, that they are not getting funding or having relationships with Israeli universities, specifically because universities in Israel are part of the whole military machine, the military university machine, if you like. They are in themselves complicit institutions in the Zionist project, let alone the current genocide. And I think in South Africa, we should note that our universities have been really backwards and slow in adopting academic boycotts. Even the big university, the sort of institutions, the Academy of Science of South Africa, the universities of South Africa, that are the kind of large bodies that gather together the vice chancellors and the managements, the institutions of our universities. Last year, they have still refused to take a stand, in fact, but last year there was over 1,000 signatures from South African academics calling on both these bodies to take a clear stand on against the genocide and on the side of social justice, but neither of them have joined the call yet, let alone called for a ceasefire or for opening channels of humanitarian aid or solidarity with Palestinian university scholars and students. And in saying that the universities have all been destroyed, of course, we know the horrific numbers of academics, of scholars and students and children, learners at schools that have been killed. So, it's quite shocking, I think, that neither of these leading organizations of our universities have taken a stand. And in fact, yesterday, Professor Salim Badat from the University of the Free State, in his acceptance of an Academy of Science Gold Medal, his speech strongly called out both the Academy of Science and the University of South Africa, and he actually donated his prize to the South African BDS Coalition. So we want to take this opportunity to really congratulate him on winning. It's a very prestigious award, but also for taking such a principled stand and really speaking truth to power. And let's hope that this pressure on our university bodies continues. But having said that, individual universities have taken a stand. And I think at the moment there are 6 universities that have passed resolutions, mostly including academic boycotts: University of Fort Hare, Western Cape, Nelson Mandela University, UNISA, University of Venda, UCT has taken a resolution, and there's hopefully soon Rhodes and University of Pretoria will do so. And they've adopted resolutions in the main committing to institutionally ending all ties and relationships, even though there might be a price to pay, because we know that there may be donors that no longer wish to fund certain programs and projects. But also there's this notion that you're going to lose funding, which should never be a reason, when there's not even a concrete example that you can cite, to not take a stand at the moment. And in fact, in UCT, there's one academic who's taking legal action against all the academics that supported a resolution. But we've just heard recently that the university has committed to oppose him. And also all the colleagues in his department have also opposed his stance. But I mean, imagine taking a legal action against people calling for an academic boycott resolution. It's really shocking. But I think it shows there's still those, in senior positions in academia, 30 years into democracy, who can't take a stand against apartheid and settler colonialism and genocide. But at the same time that so many universities are passing resolutions, I think it's very significant, because these university senates are really large bodies and these resolutions are voted on. So it does require people to really mobilize ahead in different ways. There have been various different ways on different campuses alongside of Palestine Solidarity student groups, because they really have to mobilize support if they're going to win a vote. So it's also quite hopeful that there are people who are not maybe active, activists in the solidarity world, but who are, when it comes to it, prepared to take a stand, particularly people, academics in our universities who should be, at the forefront of championing freedom of speech and ensuring they're not complicit in a genocide.
No, definitely. Just two quick questions before we wrap up, Roshan. Number one, what do you say to critics who argue that academic boycotts may hinder collaboration and dialogue between Israeli and Palestinian scholars? How do you respond to those concerns? That's number one. Number two, which South African universities still need to be put under pressure, to have them cut academic ties with Israeli institutions or pro-Israeli institutions, and how can the average man and woman go about helping in putting that pressure?
Well, I think in terms of the universities, hopefully Rhodes University and University of Pretoria will be putting resolutions soon. I think at the University of Johannesburg, there's a huge effort to ensure that a resolution is taken in a proper manner. There have been some processes that have tried to hinder, actually, a proper accountable vote. And again, on those campuses, people are mobilizing, holding seminars, having a kind of protests, students, to be visible on the campus, to make it an issue, to make people aware. So I think the more we all put pressure generally, the more pressure is put on universities. But in terms of talking about dialogue, I mean, clearly you can't dialogue with the genocidal state. We're not anywhere at the point of dialogue at all. And of course, those relations with some of the, most amazing Israeli academics like Ilan Pappé, who are anti-Zionist academics, who are Israelis, but who are completely on the, in support of Palestinian self-determination, freedom and justice. They are at the forefront, in fact, globally, of academics speaking out for Palestine.
No, definitely. And I think you put it well. We're going to leave it here for now for this episode of Boycott for Justice. Roshan, thank you so much. We'll be back again with you next week.
Thanks very much.
There we go. That was this week's edition of #Boycott for Justice, a very, very important podcast series where we try to empower you South Africans to make a meaningful action against the ongoing genocide and occupation of Gaza by exposing those complicit in human rights violations. And the focus this week was academic boycotts. And I think we learned quite an important phrase today, scholasticide. I hope I'm saying it right. It's a phrase that I'm going to be using quite often. And I think Roshan explained it very, very well, that what's currently happening with the targeting of Israeli universities and institutions of learning should be exactly that, scholasticide. So yeah, it's been another exciting edition of Boycott for Justice. I will be with you again next week. It's goodbye for now.
We are here in the middle of a Zahra neighborhood. The whole neighborhood is already destroyed. More than 17 towers are down. Here, as you can see, the firefighters trying their best to help. The people are still under the rubble. A lot of the people.
Join Hamza on his exclusive South African tour as he shares his personal experiences, never before seen footage, and powerful insights on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This is more than just a talk. It's an invitation to witness Gaza through the lens of Hamza Sha'alan. Don't miss this opportunity to meet the photojournalist who brought Gaza's pain and perseverance to the world in its darkest moments. Follow Salam Media on social media pages for more on this tour and be part of the conversation.